Today we're diving into narcissism. We all crave recognition. We all need to feel valued. In essence, narcissism begins as that universal human need to be noticed and acknowledged. But here's the key. It's not the need itself, it's how you try to fulfill it. In this podcast, I'm going to explain what narcissism really is, why all of us are narcissistic to some extent, how social media fuels it, and above all, how to distinguish healthy self-regard from pathological narcissism and understand the different types that exist. Because here's the truth, there is enormous confusion and trivialization around this topic. We will also talk about how to protect yourself from those who manipulate, who distort reality, and who may actually struggle with narcissistic personality disorder. Let's go. Take a moment to reflect. What is narcissism? It's not something evil, it's a deeply human need. The need to be seen, to elicit responses from others, to feel validated, accepted, to belong. So yes, wanting to be noticed is normal, it's healthy, it's human. But I'll say it again. The problem arises when this need isn't met in a safe or adequate way. That's when it can turn into something unhealthy, maladaptive, even pathological, a kind of insatiable desire that never seems to be satisfied. There is a longing inside you, almost as powerful as hunger or sleep, what Sigmund Freud called the desire to be great, and what William James described as the deepest principle of human nature, the craving to be appreciated. It's a thirst of the heart. That desire is what moves you to dress according to an identity, to belong to a tribe, to drive a certain car, to proudly speak about how brilliant your children or parents are. Because you want to matter, you want to be seen, you want to feel significant. And that, in itself, is human. As Dale Carnegie said in How to Win Friends and Influence People, "Tell me what gives a person a feeling of importance, and I will tell you what he is." Think about that. The way you satisfy your need to feel significant reveals your character. The desire itself is universal, but how you answer it defines who you are. And that same desire, the desire to feel important, can also push some down darker paths. Some turn to crime, others escape into fantasy or even madness, searching in a dream world for the significance reality has denied them. And this may shock many, especially compared to the stereotypical image of a narcissist, the person who's supposedly full of self-love, convinced they are superior to others. But in reality, it's quite the opposite. True narcissistic pathology isn't about confidence or charm. It's about a hidden emptiness, a constant craving, a hunger that can never be fully satisfied. A person with narcissistic personality disorder has a deep deficit in self-esteem, insecurity, and vulnerability. They don't have a strong sense of self. They feel they're not enough, that others don't truly value them, that insecurity drives them to constantly seek reassurance, to tell themselves and hear from others how impressive, how special, how amazing they are. It's not arrogance. It's a profound need for validation that never feels fully met. It's a compensation system, a maladaptive way of meeting the need for validation, acceptance, belonging. In other words, a neurotic compensation, where a series of manipulative strategies kick in: seduction, control, selfishness, all attempts to feel attended to. Deep down, a narcissistic person is profoundly dependent. They need to control others because they fear losing them, and they rely on constant reassurance, needing others to tell them how valuable they are, to make them feel good, because on their own they don't know how to give themselves that. And other times it's a fear of vulnerability, a fear of being abandoned, rejected, attacked, or simply not being seen and cared for. And so what they do is try to blame the other person or weave an invisible safety net, desperately trying to keep the other close, to make sure someone is always there to notice them, to reassure them, to fill the emptiness they cannot face alone. Different therapeutic models approach this disorder in various ways. Cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, sees it as a kind of bias, a tunnel vision that makes them focus only on themselves. It's a type of black and white thinking where white symbolizes perfection, goodness, and value, and black represents flaws or worthlessness. For someone with narcissistic issues, they almost always see themselves as white, perfect, above reproach, while judging the world around them in stark contrasts. This isn't literal. It's a way to describe how their mind polarizes reality, always favoring their own image and minimizing any vulnerability or imperfection. And there are people who operate from that place. They don't act with the logic of an autonomous, self-regulated mind. And because of that, it can be extremely difficult for those of us who are independent and grounded to step into their shoes, to truly understand pathological behavior from the perspective of someone who is deeply disturbed. Psychoanalysis and humanistic approaches are the ones that dig deepest into the origins of the problem. And here's the key. An antisocial person or someone with psychopathic traits is often not simply narcissistic. Here we're usually talking about something more, a package known as the dark triad of personality. These are individuals who are manipulative, Machiavellian, willing to do anything to get others to provide what they need, to feel valuable, to feel superior in the eyes of others. They will go to any lengths, terribly manipulative, cruel, even crude, to obtain what soothes their fear and inner discomfort, using others as instruments in the process. They are aware of the pain, suffering, humiliation or distress they cause, but it doesn't move them. There's no compassion like a regulated person would feel. That absence of emotional resonance allows them to carry out behaviors that would be unacceptable for someone who can feel for others, someone who experiences genuine compassion. If you're enjoying this content, please show your support. Kindly leave a like and share. It really helps the channel grow and reach more people who might benefit from this, and I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to share your thoughts. Let's return to healthy narcissism, the kind that reflects our natural human need to feel valued, to belong, to be accepted, to be validated, to feel seen and appreciated by others. That, in essence, is what we call healthy narcissism. Why is it healthy? Well, for several important reasons. Because human beings don't just build who we are on our own. From a very young age, we need others to help us understand ourselves. We rely on adults to show us how the world works, to explain what is beautiful and what is ugly, what is good and what is bad, what is acceptable and what isn't. From the start, we need that guidance to shape our sense of self and to feel recognized in a world we're still learning to navigate. So the child internalizes, often without questioning, a whole set of concepts, a full program about everything: money, love, health. The parents and adults around them shape a world that feels either safe and abundant or dangerous and scarce, laying the foundation for how they will see themselves and what they feel they deserve. Their own self-esteem is at stake. Am I attractive or ugly, capable or clumsy, smart or foolish? This program is implanted in the child and then runs on autopilot without question through adolescence and into adulthood. They are conditioned to believe what their environment tells them about who they are, about their very identity, and about their worth, what the adults around them decide they are worth. Basically, the child needs, first and foremost, for someone to explain the world to them, including themselves. Because naturally, they need their parents to guide them, to measure them, to help them understand who they are and how they fit into the world around them. Second, the child needs to be attended to because they are not yet autonomous. They need to be fed. They need comfort when they are scared. They need emotional regulation from others. In short, they need to feel seen, because being truly noticed is what soothes them, what makes them feel safe and held. Third, and finally, the child needs to feel valuable, to build a healthy self-image and a strong sense of self-worth. But it's more than just self-esteem. On a deeper, almost biological level, in our survival instincts, they know that others must care for them. If they aren't valued, if they don't matter to others, why would anyone feed them, protect them from predators, carry them when the nomadic tribe moves, care for them when they're sick? So, at our most primitive core, this need to be valued translates into wanting to matter to others. It's not simply ego, desire, or seduction, it's survival. Today, we no longer fight for survival like our ancestors did, but the mind still carries that primitive component. Today, survival is social. It's about competition, status, and belonging. That's why we are so sensitive to rejection, criticism, abandonment, and similar experiences. So, to sum it up simply, narcissism is the human need we all share, to be seen, to be noticed, to feel attended to by others. From a humanistic perspective, this is a legitimate need. The problem arises when it isn't met properly in our early relationships. If no one reflects back what's good in me, if no one teaches me to see myself and regulate my emotions, I can't internalize it. And since I'm not autonomous in this sense, without a clear inner sense of self, I have to seek it from others, or do things to make myself feel important, to feel noticed, to soothe my fear. To build who I am, I need to be seen by others. Autonomy is not absolute. It's completely normal to want to be seen. The problem arises when this need isn't met in a safe or adequate way. That's when it can become unhealthy, maladaptive, even pathological, with a kind of insatiable desire at its core. We can feel so distressed when someone doesn't give us what we need, or makes us feel like we've failed, like we're not enough. And that's where we enter what's commonly called being narcissistic, which is really unhealthy narcissism. The goal itself is legitimate, valid, wanting to feel seen, valued, and important. But the ways it's pursued, the seduction, the manipulation, the ego, showing off achievements, self-glorification, pride, lack of self-reflection, that's what becomes unhealthy. The psychological explanation for why narcissists function the way they do is that it represents a maladaptive attempt to meet a vital need. But one thing is that the need itself is legitimate, and another is that the way they try to meet it can be unhealthy. And fundamentally, there are two ways to protect ourselves. First, by strengthening our own sense of self, because sometimes our wounds and insecurities attract these kinds of people, like low self-esteem drawing in abusive partners. And second, and most importantly, by setting boundaries as early as possible, creating a shield that helps us diffuse harmful or deviant behaviors before they take hold. And you can also be labeled a narcissist, simply for choosing yourself, for setting boundaries, for not abandoning your needs to satisfy someone else's. But remember, true solidarity begins with you. If you're not well, how can you genuinely do good for others? Sometimes people accuse you of being narcissistic not because you are, but because they don't feel seen or validated by you. Only when we truly understand a problem can we address it effectively. This doesn't mean we justify pathological or antisocial behavior. Just as when a psychopath or a person with schizophrenia loses control and harms someone, we recognize that it's not acceptable, but we also don't simply label them as bad or perverse. Instead, we understand that they are struggling with an illness, and we respond accordingly. Normally, people with narcissistic personality disorder are not disconnected from reality. They know when they're doing something wrong. That's why there is moral responsibility, and in many cases, legal responsibility for their harmful actions. But at the same time, I believe it's helpful to understand them as what they are, individuals struggling with a mental health condition. When a narcissistic person needs to feel seen, validated, and powerful, they often rely on others, family, partners, friends, co-workers, to meet that need. When they find someone who provides it, they may become focused on that person, not out of care, but as a way to soothe themselves, to feel important, admired, or capable. And today, social media often reduces complex topics like narcissism to oversimplified black and white narratives, and that reductionism can push people into hypervigilance. We start overreacting to every small sign, scanning for red flags everywhere, seeing danger in almost everything. What's often called a perverse narcissist isn't just narcissistic on its own. Usually, it comes as part of the dark triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, sometimes combined with antisocial behaviors. And these are the people who, in their drive to get validation from others, often become controlling, manipulative, and focused on using others to meet their needs. In another video, we'll continue exploring this topic. We'll talk about common patterns of abusive narcissism. First, there's the powerful type, those who dominate and control, seeking explicit authority over others. Then there's the trickster or seducer, the ones who feel good when manipulating others, charming, convincing, like wolves in sheep's clothing. Next are the fantasists, frustrated by how the world sees them, always feeling misunderstood or treated unfairly, living in a vision of the future where everyone will finally recognize their brilliance. They operate heavily in fantasy and self-justification. Then we have the lover type, focused on romantic relationships, with unreasonable expectations for how a partner should act, intolerant when reality doesn't match their ideal. A similar pattern can occur with relatives, mothers, fathers, and siblings. They constantly feel unloved or unappreciated, saying things like, "You don't value me, you don't show me love, you're abandoning me." Finally, there's the messianic or savior type, the leaders of cults, NGOs, or spiritual movements, who appear as if they've come to save the world, projecting grand visions of themselves as indispensable guides. Huge thanks for watching. If you like it, please kindly leave a like. See you in the next video.